5 times a day, seriously? Shouted the alien waitress upon learning about human virility. The Verdant Vixen was the busiest bar in Sephora Colony, a melting pot of humans and aliens carving out a life together on the fringe of explored space. Tonight it buzzed with even more energy than usual, as workers unwound after a long shift at the dockyards. Kyla wove deftly between the crowded tables, her tray laden with frothing mugs of Sephoran ale. The green-skinned Saphiri moved with a sensual grace, her lithe figure accentuated by the form-fitting uniform. Delicate, pointed ears peeked out from waves of pale green hair. She deposited the drinks at a boisterous table of dock workers and flashed them a dazzling smile, inciting whoops and hollers. Kyla was used to the attention. As one of the only Saphiri females in the colony, she stood out, but she had a job to do. Sidestepping wandering hands, Kyla made her way back to the bar where her friend and co-worker Lissa was pouring a line of shots. The blue-skinned Orion gave her a knowing smirk, her silvery eyes glinting mischievously. "Looks like you've got some admirers tonight, Kai. When are you going to let one of these fine gentlemen sweep you off your feet?" Kyla rolled her eyes. "You know my people only mate once a year. I don't have the same appetites as you Orions." "Honey, you don't know what you're missing," Lissa said with a wink. "Just the other week I spent the night with Maddox." "The freighter pilot?" Kyla asked, mildly scandalized. Maddox had a reputation as a ladies' man. "The same. Let me tell you, that man has stamina. We went 5 rounds. Kyla nearly dropped the empty glasses she was collecting. 5 times? In one night? "Yep," Lissa said smugly. "That's a thing about human men. They're insatiable." Kyla was floored. For her species, mating was an annual ritual, not a recreational activity. The idea of coupling multiple times in a single night was unheard of, impossible even, and yet she couldn't deny she was intrigued. Saphiri mating was perfunctory, a biological necessity. But the way Lissa described it, sex with humans sounded fun, exciting even. Kyla's mind began to wander, painting a vivid picture of tangled limbs and sweat-slick skin, of strong hands gripping her hips as a hard body drove into her again and again and again. "Kai, hello?" Lissa's amused voice snapped Kyla out of her lurid daydream. She felt heat rising in her cheeks. "Sorry, I was just thinking." "I'll bet you were," Lissa teased. "I've seen that look before. Usually right before I take a man back to my—" "Kyla," Braz, the burly Orion bartender, interrupted. "Quit lollygagging and get back to work. We've got thirsty customers." "Yes, sir," Kyla muttered, hurrying to bust the dirty dishes back to the kitchen. But as she worked, her mind kept drifting back to her conversation with Lissa. 5 times. It seemed excessive, impossible. Then again, she'd seen human men in action. They were bold and brash, brimming with a restless energy, and though she hated to traffic in stereotypes, there was no denying they were a virile bunch. Everywhere she looked, humans were pairing off with every manner of alien species and happily propagating. Maybe there was something to this whole insatiable reputation. As the night wore on and the patrons grew rowdier, Kyla found herself studying the human men with new eyes. The broad-shouldered laborers throwing darts in the corner, the wiry spacers gesticulating wildly as they swapped stories. Even the fresh-faced young soldier nursing a beer at the end of the bar. They all had a certain appeal, she had to admit. A raw magnetism. She'd always appreciated their strength and bravery in an abstract sense, but now she was appreciating them on a much more visceral level. "Stop it," she chided herself. "You're being ridiculous. These are people, not pieces of meat." Still, a traitorous part of her brain whispered that there would be no harm in looking, in indulging in a little harmless fantasy. It's not like she would ever act on these foolish impulses. Except, would it really be so foolish? Lissa seemed to enjoy her human paramours, and it's not like Kyla had any prospects among her own kind. The few Saphiri males in the colony were already mated. Maybe it was time for her to broaden her horizons, to be a bit more adventurous. As if on cue, the doors to the Verdant Vixen swung open and a group of men strode in. They wore the crisp gray uniforms of the Earth Defense Corps, the patch on their shoulders indicating they were fighter pilots. The one in the lead was tall and handsome, with close-cropped black hair and piercing blue eyes. He had an air of easy confidence as he led his fellow pilots to an empty table. Kyla's heart began to race. She'd always had a bit of a thing for flyboys with their dashing bravado and cocky grins. And this one? Well, he was especially fine. Lissa sidled up next to her, nudging her with an elbow. "Dibs on the blonde one." "I thought you had sworn off pilots after that thing with Rays," Kyla said distractedly, her eyes still glued to the dark-haired leader. "Oh, I'm not looking for anything serious." Just a bit of fun. Fun. The word echoed in Kyla's head as she watched the handsome pilot throw his head back and laugh at something one of his buddies said. His teeth were very white against his tan skin. Kyla squared her shoulders. Decision made. She was going to have some fun tonight, and that gorgeous flyboy was how she was going to do it. Grabbing a fresh e-pad, she sauntered over to their table, putting a little extra sway in her hips. "Evening, boys," she said, pleased when several appreciative glances landed on her. "What can I get you?" The dark-haired pilot looked up at her, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. "Well, hello there." Kyla felt a little thrill run through her at the deep, resonant timbre of his voice. This was a man who was used to being in command. "I'm Kyla," she said, returning his smile. "Welcome to the Verdant Vixen." "Kyla," he repeated, as if savoring the shape of her name in his mouth. "I'm Grayson, Gray, and these are my boys, Lex, Rafe, and Tor." The other pilots nodded in greeting, but Kyla barely registered them. She was too busy basking in the heat of Gray's attention. "You flyboys looking to blow off a little steam?" she asked, injecting a flirtatious lilt into her voice. "Something like that," Gray said, his eyes dragging over her body in a way that made her feel flushed all over. "We just got in from a long haul. Thought we'd check out the local watering hole." "Well, you've come to the right place," Kyla said. "The Verdant Vixen is the heart of Sephora Colony. Stick with me and I'll make sure you have a very good time." The promise in her words was unmistakable. Gray's eyebrows shot up, but he looked more intrigued than scandalized. "Is that so?" he murmured, leaning forward. "And what exactly does a good time entail?" Kyla's breath caught at his proximity. This close, she could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, could smell the clean, masculine scent of him. She had the sudden urge to climb into his lap and rub herself all over him like a cat in heat, to purr in his ear and feel those strong hands sliding over her body. "Down, girl," she thought wildly. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." Outwardly, she merely shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Stick around and find out." With that, she turned on her heel and sashayed back to the bar to put in their drink orders, making sure to put a little extra wiggle in her walk. She could feel Gray's eyes on her the whole way, searing into her like a brand. A delicious shiver ran through her. Oh yes, she was definitely going to have some fun tonight. Kyla's heart raced as she led Gray back to her small apartment above the Verdant Vixen. She could hardly believe this was happening. She was really going to do this. She was going to sleep with a human. Gray's hand was warm in hers, his callous palms scraping deliciously against her softer skin. Every nerve in her body felt electrified, hyper-aware of his presence behind her. When they reached her door, Kyla fumbled with the keypad, her fingers trembling slightly. Gray chuckled, a deep, rich sound that sent shivers down her spine. "Nervous?" he asked, crowding close behind her. She could feel the heat of him through her thin uniform. "No," she lied, finally getting the door open. She stepped inside, turning to face him. "I want this." And she did. Oh, how she did. Her body was thrumming with need, aching in places she'd never ached before. Gray kicked the door shut behind him, his blue eyes burning into her. "Good, because I've been wanting to do this from the moment I saw you." He caught her around the waist, hauling her against him. Kyla gasped at the sudden contact, at the feel of his hard body pressed against her softer curves. Then his mouth was on hers, hot and demanding. Kyla moaned, opening for him, and he swept inside, his tongue stroking along hers in a sensual dance. She'd been kissed before, but never like this. Never with this kind of hunger, this kind of all-consuming passion. It was overwhelming in the best possible way. Gray walked her backwards, never breaking the kiss, until her legs hit the edge of her bed. He tumbled her down onto the mattress, following her down, covering her body with his own. "You have no idea how sexy you are." He growled against her throat, nipping lightly at her pulse point. "I've been half-hard all night watching you move around the bar in this tight little uniform." Kyla whimpered as he ground his hips against hers, letting her feel the evidence of his words. He was hard, so deliciously hard and big, bigger than any Saphiri male. A wave of anticipation washed over her at the thought of their intimate connection. Would it be as amazing as she imagined? The longing in her heart intensified, turning into a profound yearning. "Please," she whispered, arching against him. "I need you." Gray let out a low growl, his hands eagerly tugging at her uniform. Buttons popped open as he undid them, revealing her feminine curves to his appreciative gaze. "Beautiful," he murmured, cupping the soft mounds in his large hands. His thumbs brushed over her breasts and Kyla cried out at the sensation, the sensitive peaks pebbling under his touch. He lowered his head, gently kissing the delicate skin. Kyla's breath hitched at the feel of his warm lips caressing her sensitive flesh. Pleasure shot through her, sharp and bright, unlike anything she'd ever experienced. And they were just getting started. Gray lavished attention on her breasts, sucking and licking and nipping, until Kyla was a writhing, mewling mess beneath him. Her hands fisted in his short hair, holding him to her, silently begging for more. He obliged, kissing his way down her body, his stubble rasping deliciously against her sensitive skin. When he reached the waistband of her skirt, he looked up at her, a wicked gleam in his eyes. "Let's get this off, shall we?" He didn't wait for a response, simply hooked his fingers into the fabric and tugged. Kyla lifted her hips to help him, shimmying out of the garment. Gray tossed it aside, leaving her clad in only a tiny scrap of lace that passed for underwear. His gaze raked over her, hot and possessive, lingering on the damp patch at the apex of her thighs. "Fuck, you're so ready," he rasped, gently caressing her through the delicate fabric of the lace. "Is this all for me, baby?" "Yes," Kyla moaned, shamelessly grinding against his hand. "All for you." She'd never been this wet, this needy. Her body was on fire, craving his touch, craving the thick hardness she could see straining against his uniform pants. As if reading her mind, Gray stood, quickly shedding his clothes. Kyla drank in the sight of him, all tan skin and rippling muscle, his dignity proudly standing out against his stately figure. He was magnificent, and he was all hers, at least for tonight. Gray crawled back onto the bed, settling between her spread thighs. With a swift tug, he removed the last barrier between them, leaving her bare and wanting. His touch was electric as he trailed kisses up her inner thigh, stoking the fire within her. Kyla held her breath, waiting, wanting. When he finally tasted her, she nearly screamed, her body bowing off the bed in sweet surrender. Pleasure exploded through her as Gray worshipped her with his mouth, driving her higher and higher. His skilled ministrations had her seeing stars, had her babbling incoherently as she fisted her hands in his hair, holding him to her. The sensations were almost too much to bear, the coil of bliss winding tighter and tighter within her until it finally snapped. Kyla reached her peak with a breathless cry, waves of ecstasy crashing over her, drowning her. Gray gentled his touch, easing her through the aftershocks until she was limp and sated. "That's one," he murmured against her skin. "Think you can handle 4 more?" Kyla could only whimper in response, her mind still hazy with pleasure. The thought of experiencing such rapture again and again was both thrilling and daunting. She wasn't sure she'd survive it, but oh, what a way to go. Gray trailed kisses up her body, pausing to lavish attention on her breasts before claiming her mouth in a deep, hungry kiss. Kyla could taste herself on his tongue, and it only fueled her desire. She wrapped herself around him, reveling in the feel of his hard body pressed against her softer curves. She could feel his need, hot and insistent against her thigh, and it made her ache with want. "Please," she begged, undulating her hips in a silent plea, "I need you inside me." "Fuck, Kyla," Gray groaned, his forehead pressed to hers. "You have no idea how much I want that, but we have to go slow. I don't want to hurt you." The tenderness in his words made her heart flutter even as her body burned for him. She almost laughed at the idea of him hurting her. Right now, she couldn't imagine anything feeling better than being one with him. "You won't," she assured him, canting her hips again in invitation. "I'm ready. I'm so ready for you." To emphasize her point, she reached between them, guiding him to where she needed him most. They both groaned at the first intimate touch, pleasure sparking through them like lightning. Gray held himself still, letting her adjust to the feel of him. When she squirmed against him, silently begging for more, he began to move. Their joining was slow at first, a delicious tease that had Kyla biting her lip against the urge to demand more, but as her body welcomed him deeper, Gray's control began to fray. Soon the room was filled with the sounds of their passion, the bed shaking with the force of their lovemaking. Kyla clung to him, nails biting into his skin as she urged him on with wordless cries. "Harder," she demanded, tossing her head back in abandon. "Take me harder, Gray." He complied with a roar, moving with a powerful rhythm that had her seeing stars. Kyla matched his every movement, chasing the pleasure that coiled tighter and tighter within her. "Touch yourself," Gray commanded, his voice rough with strain. "I want to feel you come on me." Kyla obeyed, her fingers finding her aching center. The added stimulation was all she needed to fly apart, her release crashing over her in dizzying waves of ecstasy. Gray followed her over the edge with a hoarse shout, his own pleasure pulsing deep within her. Kyla reveled in the feeling, in the intimacy of the moment. They collapsed together, sweat slicked and satisfied. Gray gathered her close, tucking her against his chest as they caught their breath. Kyla couldn't remember ever feeling so content, so utterly replete. Her body sang with the aftershocks of their lovemaking, still tingling with the promise of more to come, and to think he wanted to do it again. And again, and again, and again. The mere thought had desire stirring anew within her, her exhausted body somehow finding the energy to want more. As if sensing her thoughts, Gray nuzzled her hair, his hand skimming down her back to cup her hip. "Give me a few minutes and we'll go again," he murmured, nipping at her ear. "I meant what I said about 5 times. Kyla shivered, pressing closer to him. She had no doubt he'd make good on that promise. Humans really were amazing creatures, and she was going to enjoy every moment of discovering just how amazing they could be. Kyla was just about to pull Gray down for another searing kiss when a shrill beeping cut through the haze of their passion. Gray groaned, burying his face in her neck for a moment, before reluctantly rolling off her and reaching for his discarded pants. He fished out his comm unit, frowning at the display. "Shit, it's my CO." Kyla sat up, pulling the sheet around her naked body as she watched him answer the call. "Commander, what's the situation?" Gray listened intently, his brow furrowing. "Understood. I'll be there in 20. He ended the call, turning to Kyla with an apologetic look. "I have to go. There's been an incident at the base and all personnel are being recalled." Disappointment crashed over Kyla, sharp and sudden. She'd been so looking forward to exploring more of this newfound passion with Gray. The thought of him leaving now, just when things were getting interesting, was almost physically painful. But she understood duty. Gray was a soldier, and his first responsibility was to his job, not to her. "Of course," she said, trying to keep the hurt from her voice. "I understand." Gray reached for her, cupping her face in his hands. "Hey, don't look like that. This isn't over, not by a long shot. As soon as I deal with this situation, I'm coming right back here to finish what we started." The promise in his words sent a shiver down Kyla's spine, rekindling the embers of her desire. "You better. I'm holding you to that 5 times, soldier." Gray grinned, stealing a quick hard kiss. "Yes, ma'am." He dressed quickly, every inch the professional soldier, despite the intimate activities of just moments ago. Kyla admired the efficiency of his movements, the coiled power in his body as he prepared to leave. At the door, he paused, turning back to her. "I meant what I said, Kyla. I'll be back as soon as I can. Don't go anywhere." With that, he was gone, leaving Kyla alone with her thoughts and her still tingling body. She flopped back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling. Had that really just happened? Had she really just had the most mind-blowing sex of her life with a human male? A giddy laugh bubbled up in her throat. Yes, she had, and it had been everything she'd hoped for and more. Gray was an incredible lover, passionate and skilled, and so very attentive. He'd played her body like a finely tuned instrument, bringing her to heights of pleasure she'd never even dreamed possible. And to think that was just the beginning. He'd promised her more, so much more. 5 times, he'd said. 5 times in one night. The mere thought had Kyla squirming against the sheets, her body already aching for his touch again. How was she going to survive such prolonged ecstasy? Her poor heart might just give out. But oh, what a way to go. Kyla let herself drift, replaying every delicious moment in her mind. The feel of Gray's hands on her skin, the heat of his mouth, the thick, hard length of him moving inside her. It was almost enough to make her peak again, just from the memory alone. She was just about to let her own hands wander, to chase that elusive release, when a knock sounded at her door. Kyla sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest. Had Gray forgotten something? "Who is it?" she called out, hoping against hope that it was her lover returning. "It's Lissa, you lucky bitch!" "Open up," Kyla groaned, flopping back against the pillows. Of course Lissa would come nosing around, looking for details. The Orion was incorrigible when it came to gossip, especially of the carnal variety. For a moment, Kyla considered ignoring her, pretending to be asleep. But she knew Lissa would just keep knocking, probably loud enough to wake the whole building. With a sigh, Kyla dragged herself out of bed, wrapping the sheet around herself like a makeshift dress. She padded to the door, opening it just a crack. "What do you want, Lissa? I'm trying to sleep." Lissa snorted, pushing her way into the apartment. Sleep, my blue ass! I saw that hunky pilot leaving just now. You totally took my advice and banged him, didn't you? Kyla felt her cheeks heat, but she couldn't stop the grin that spread across her face. Maybe, Lissa squealed, clapping her hands. I knew it! I knew you had it in you, Kai. So tell me everything. Was it as mind-blowing as I said it would be? Kyla bit her lip, memories of her encounter with Gray flashing through her mind. Better, she relented, letting Lissa pull her over to the couch. The two friends curled up together, Kyla spilling every juicy detail as Lissa listened raptly. By the mother, he really went 5 times? Lissa fanned herself. I told you, human men have the stamina of rutting beasts. You did tell me, Kyla acknowledged with a laugh. And you were right, it was incredible. Lissa frowned. Wait, you said he had to leave? Where did he go? Kyla sighed. He got called back to base, some kind of emergency, but he said he'd come back as soon as he could to, and I quote, finish what we started. Ooh, I like the sound of that, Lissa purred. You lucky girl. I'm so proud of you for taking my advice and going for it. Kyla hugged a pillow to her chest, a dreamy smile on her face. I can hardly believe it myself. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out it was all just a very vivid dream. Believe it, babe. You just lived out every girl's fantasy, a night of passion with a gorgeous human soldier. Lissa sighed. I'm going to have to find me another one. Can't let you have all the fun. Kyla laughed, shoving at her friend playfully. There's plenty of humans to go around, Lise. Don't I know it, Lissa said with a wicked grin. And I plan to sample as many as I can. They gossiped a while longer before Lissa finally took her leave, promising to cover Kyla's shift at the bar so she could rest up for round 2. Kyla just shook her head, amused and exasperated by her friend's antics. But she was also grateful. She was going to need all her energy for when Gray returned. If he returned. The thought crept in, unwelcome and unwanted. Kyla tried to push it away, but it lingered, a niggling doubt in the back of her mind. Gray had said he'd come back, had promised. But what if he didn't? What if this emergency at the base kept him away? Or worse, what if he changed his mind? What if he decided that one night with an alien girl was enough, that he didn't want more? Kyla's heart clenched at the thought. She'd only just found this incredible connection, this burning passion. The idea of losing it so soon was unbearable, but there was nothing she could do but wait and hope. Hope that Gray meant what he said, that he felt the same undeniable pull between them. In the meantime, she would hold on to the memories of their night together, the feel of his hands on her skin, the sound of his voice in her ear. She would replay every moment, every touch, every sigh until they were seared into her mind. And when he came back, because he would come back, he had to, she would be ready. Ready to explore this amazing new world of pleasure and passion. Ready to give herself over to the incredible sensations only he could evoke in her. Humans really were amazing creatures, and Kyla was going to enjoy every second of discovering just how amazing they could be. Days turned into weeks with no word from Gray. Kyla tried to go about her life as normal, working her shifts at the Verdant Vixen, spending time with Lissa and her other friends. But there was a gray-shaped hole in her heart that nothing could fill. She couldn't stop thinking about him, about their incredible night together. The memories played on a constant loop in her mind, tormenting her with what she might have lost. Had it really meant nothing to him? Was she just another conquest, another notch on his bedpost? The thought made her feel sick to her stomach. Lissa, ever the supportive friend, was there for Kyla every step of the way. She listened patiently as Kyla poured out her fears and doubts, offering comfort and reassurance. He'll be back, Kai, she said one night as they sat in Kyla's apartment, sharing a bottle of Sephoran wine. I saw the way he looked at you. That's not the look of a man who's just in it for a quick lay. Kyla sighed, swirling the deep purple liquid in her glass. I want to believe that, Liz, but it's been so long. What if he's forgotten about me? What if he's found someone else? Lissa snorted. Impossible. No man could forget a night like the one you two had. And as for finding someone else, please, you're a catch, Kyla. That human is lucky to have you. Kyla managed a small smile. Thanks, Liz. I don't know what I'd do without you. Lissa grinned, throwing an arm around Kyla's shoulders. Probably pine away into nothingness. Good thing you've got me to keep your spirits up. And despite Lissa's unwavering support, as more time passed with no sign of Gray, even her eternal optimism began to wane. Maybe it's time to move on, she suggested gently one evening as they were getting ready for their shift at the bar. I hate seeing you like this, Kai. It's been weeks. If he was going to come back, he would have by now. Kyla felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. I know you're right. I can't help but hope, you know? What we had, it felt real. Special. Lissa hugged her tight. I know, honey, but you can't put your life on hold forever. You deserve to be happy, with or without him. Kyla took a deep, shuddering breath. Okay, I'll try to move on. But even as she said the words, her heart rebelled. Moving on felt like giving up, like admitting that what she and Gray had shared meant nothing. She was just about ready to resign herself to the fact that she'd never see her handsome human lover again. And then, on a night like any other, he walked into the Verdant Vixen. Kyla was in the middle of serving a rowdy group of Sephoran miners when she heard the distinctive timbre of his voice. Her heart leapt into her throat and she spun around, hardly daring to believe it. But there he was, looking a little tired and a lot sexy in his uniform, his blue eyes scanning the room. When they landed on her, his face split into a wide, heart-stopping grin. Kyla didn't remember crossing the room. One moment she was holding a tray of drinks, the next she was in his arms, the tray clattering, forgotten to the floor. You came back, she whispered, tears pricking at her eyes. I was starting to think I'd never see you again. Gray held her tighter, burying his face in her hair. I'm so sorry, Kyla. The situation at the base was a lot more complicated than we initially thought. It took longer to resolve than I expected. He pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. But I never forgot about you, not for a single moment. You were all I could think about. Kyla's heart soared at his words. He had thought about her. He had missed her just as much as she'd missed him. I was so scared, she admitted, her voice trembling. I thought maybe you'd changed your mind, that you didn't want me anymore. Never, Grace said fiercely. Kyla, that night with you, it was the most incredible thing I've ever experienced. I've been going crazy these past few weeks, wanting you, needing you. He kissed her then, right there in the middle of the crowded bar. Kyla melted into him, pouring all her pent-up longing and relief into the kiss. Someone wolf whistled. It was definitely Lissa, the incorrigible instigator. And Kyla reluctantly pulled away, remembering where they were. Let's get out of here, Gray murmured, his eyes dark with promise. I believe I made you a promise about 5 times. I intend to keep it, Kyla shivered, heat pooling low in her belly. Yes, please. She turned to find Lissa already there, grinning from ear to ear as she shooed them towards the door. Go, I've got you covered here. You two have a lot of catching up to do. Kyla hugged her friend quickly. Thank you, Liz, for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you these past few weeks. Lissa squeezed her tight. That's what friends are for, Kai. I'm just happy to see you smiling again. Now go, enjoy your man. And I want details later. Kyla laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. You got it. With one last grateful look at her best friend, Kyla let Gray lead her out of the bar and into the night. They barely made it through the door of her apartment before they were on each other, hands grasping, mouths hungry. Clothes were shed in a frenzied rush, scattered haphazardly across the floor as they stumbled towards the bed. Missed you, Gray gasped between kisses, his hands roaming over her body like he was trying to relearn every curve, every dip and swell. Missed this. Missed us. Show me, Kyla demanded, falling back onto the bed and pulling him down with her. Show me how much you missed me. And he did, with his hands and his mouth and his body, worshiping her with a fervor that took her breath away. He brought her to the brink again and again, wringing cries of ecstasy from her lips until she was a quivering, oversensitized mess. Only then did they finally come together, their connection deep and profound. Kyla clung to him, moving in sync, cherishing every moment and savoring the feel of skin against skin. It was just as incredible as she remembered, maybe even more so, because this time it wasn't just physical. This time there were emotions involved, deep and powerful and a little bit terrifying in their intensity. When they finally collapsed together, spent and sated, Kyla couldn't stop the words from tumbling out. I think I'm falling in love with you, she whispered into the sweat-dampened skin of his chest. I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other, but I can't help how I feel. Gray was silent for a moment and Kyla's heart clenched, fear gripping her. Had she said too much? Had she ruined everything? But then he was tilting her chin up, forcing her to meet his gaze, and the look in his eyes took her breath away. "It's not crazy," he said softly, reverently, "because I'm falling in love with you too, Kyla. I think I started falling the moment I saw you." Joy, pure and incandescent, burst through Kyla like a supernova. She surged up, capturing his lips in a searing kiss, pouring all her love and happiness into it. They made love twice more that night and once again in the morning, Gray proving that his stamina was no fluke. Kyla was deliciously sore and thoroughly satisfied by the time they finally managed to drag themselves out of bed. As they shared a lazy breakfast, talking and laughing and simply enjoying being together, Kyla marveled at the turn her life had taken. Just a few short weeks ago, she'd been a lonely alien girl, yearning for something she couldn't even name. And now she had found it, found him, her human, her love. It wasn't going to be easy, she knew. Gray's job meant he would be away often, sometimes for long stretches of time, and there would be those who wouldn't understand, who would judge them for their differences. But Kyla knew with a bone-deep certainty that it would be worth it, because what they had was special, once in a lifetime, the kind of love that people wrote songs and stories about. And to think it had all started with a bit of gossip and a dare. Lissa had been right about human men and their incredible stamina, but she'd been right about something else too. Sometimes you had to take a chance, to reach for what you wanted with both hands, because you never knew what amazing things might come of it. As she watched Gray across the table, his blue eyes crinkling with laughter at something she'd said, Kyla sent up a silent thank you to the universe for bringing this incredible man into her life, for giving her the courage to seize her chance at happiness. And she sent a thank you to Lissa for being the best friend a girl could ask for pushing her to take a chance, for being there for her through the ups and downs. She couldn't wait to tell Lissa all about it, to share in the joy of this new chapter in her life. But that could wait. For now, she just wanted to bask in this moment with Gray. Humans really were amazing creatures, and she was the luckiest alien in the galaxy to have found one to love.